Greenpeace urge Unilever to act as a strong leader, because this isn't about just what Unilever does. It's about something else. Greenpeace wants Unilever to be the strong leader. And we want to do this through, because Unilever is a leader of the Roundtable of Sustainable Palm Oil. They work with sustainability criteria for palm oil. The big problem is the palm oil suppliers, not Unilever. It's the palm oil suppliers that's the problem. And they state this. Unilever suppliers are driving species extinction, climate change through significant greenhouse gas emissions linked to deforestation and peatland destruction, and land conflict with forest-dependent communities. And they now call on a moratorium on oil palm expansion. They want a leader, a strong leader. And they published this report, burning up Borneo at the same time. The thing is, what they attack is palm oil that's used for one thing. Tell the government to choose the right biofuel. This is from Greenpeace. Or the orangutan gets it. So it's the biodiesel that's the problem. Only some weeks after this attack from Greenpeace against Unilever, Unilever agrees. They think this is a good idea. Unilever would support the call for a moratorium. This is announced at the Prince of Wales May Day Summit on Climate Change. Unilever is a part of the Prince of Wales Corporate Leaders Group, with giants as Shell Oil, Philips, and Coca-Cola. Prince Charles thinks this is a brilliant idea and supports this moratorium. And just some days later, May 9, 2008, the Greenpeace and Unilever forms an alliance. And Unilever agrees to work with Greenpeace campaigners for 6 months to build a coalition of companies that support the moratorium. It's a very quick move, very quick. And the next thing, we go to May 21, 2008. Greenpeace now works for Unilever. And they present a report, a very, very thick report, called The Hidden Carbon Liability of Indonesian Palm Oil. And it's very interesting to read this report, because it hasn't really the feel of a Greenpeace report. It's more like a Unilever report. And now they want to invite other food giants to join the league, the new alliance. And it's the thing is, I mean, to write such a report, you can't do it on 10 days. So, what happened? What really happened? Was it Greenpeace that made Unilever change the opinion? Well, obviously. As I'm doing this talk, not really. The former leader of Friends of the Earth, Jonathan Porritt, was an environmental advisor to Unilever. He was kind of surprised by this, because Greenpeace bragged about this. They saw it as they have won over the big company and influenced the opinion. But he said that Greenpeace could not be credited for this, as Unilever had considered this move for a long time. They didn't deserve the goodwill for the act. So, how did it all start? We will get back to the roots. To 1987. Biofuels was long before the policy process started considered to have limitations. And the Brundtland report in 1987 stated that environmental problems would increase with the development of renewable energy systems. I don't think that many people really read the Brundtland report, and that actually is stated there, because they have written extensively of those problems that would come with biofuels. So everything was known. And I followed this in my doctoral thesis, but they were doing a lot of investigations, and they saw the problems. We knew the problems. One can say they were part of the script. No high hopes for put on biofuels as the big rescuer. Christiane Scrivener, she was a commissioner in the early 90s. She said about biofuels that it will only be able to reach a 5% share. And it would pose no threat to anyone. And at this time, biofuels was more framed as a way for the farmers to get a new market. But it was also based on policy recommendations from a couple of climate meetings in the 80s, as well as policy to support the European agricultural sector. The Rhetorics was concerned with response to the alleged climate threat and the decisions that were made to limit carbon dioxide emissions. But as we know, rhetorics and reality are not the same. So, at this time, investigations started in the European Union, where we're done together with Chatham House in London. Extensive studies on how to achieve this and the limitations with biofuels as well. And in 2008, in the year 2000, the stage was set for the process to start. Actually, you can read this in documents from the European Union. They actually say this. Stage is set, just to start. At a G8 Group of 8 meeting in Okinawa, Japan, a renewable energy task force was started its operations. A big global call was sent out to develop energy in order to, as we said, protect the global environment. This task force was led by Mark Moody Stewart, the chairman of Shell Oil, and Dr. Corrado Clini. Clini had been part of the Italian delegation to the United Nations Earth Summit in '92 and the Kyoto Conference on Climate Change in 1997. Clini would later be the head of the Global Bioenergy Partnership. Funds to his task force came from Royal Dutch Shell Foundation, International Energy Agency, and the British, Italian, and French environmental departments. So, oil industry funded this. Very interesting. At the same time, European Union started to promote biofuels. This was said to be beneficial to employment, energy security, of course, always energy security, and also to further the aims of sustainable development. And one can ask, whose sustainable development? In this biofuels directive from 2003, it was decided to have not a mandatory goal of 5.75% biofuels in the energy mix, transport energy mix, to 2010. There were, however, no sustainability criteria at this time. Some actors started to talk about it in this policy process. However, this had already been prepared. The planning started early. And this was a thing from Holland. We started a task force called Task Force Energy Transition. This was chaired by Rein Willems from Royal Dutch Shell. The aim was to manage a transition to sustainability and also test new ways of governance. In this work, this task force, they had a couple of subgroups that worked with a couple of topics and what to work out, one can say, experiments, transition experiments. Unilever was a part of one of these groups called Green Resources. They had the goal to develop sustainable criteria for biomass and biofuels. Two professors of management, Jan Rothmans and René Kemp, got the mission to develop plans on how to achieve these goals. Their strategies was rooted in business management, like Deming's principle of plan, do, check, act. The model was based on 4 parts: problem structuring, development of coalitions and transition agendas, mobilizing actors in projects, and monitor, evaluate, and learn. At the same time, the thing is, this was very close to strategies that were used by Unilever. This is Peter Winsemius. He was an advisor to Unilever. Had been a Dutch minister of the environment, and also a member of the Shell Foundation board. A lot of people, and this is Holland, so many people are involved with Shell oil. Peter Winsemius had previously worked out strategies for implemented sustainable development for the Trilateral Commission in the book Beyond Interdependence from 1991. This book was written together with Jim McNeill, but was the main author of the Brundtland Report. And this book, Beyond Independence, could be seen as a sequel to Our Common Future. Winsemius developed something that he called the policy life cycle for environmental issues. And this is nothing new in political science. A lot of models. We have a lot of models for this. And he has studied, he talked about how he had developed an understanding of the political process in environmental questions, and how key actors were involved, and also how one could try to influence this game. Winsemius and his co-author Ulrich Guntram advised large corporations to involve themselves in all stages of the policy process in the book A Thousand Shades of Green: Sustainable Strategies for Competitive Advantage, a handbook for the political process and how to manage this. One thing that was advised was to forming alliances with the environmental organizations that previously had been seen as kind of an enemy. And also work out close cooperation with organizations to form a kind of win-win agreement. Every partner in these alliances would have a win something for themselves. And in the end, the big corporation would achieve a legislation that would be beneficial for them. These were strategies that Unilever used as they worked with developing sustainable criteria for palm oil, which was done by the Unilever WWF initiative, RSPO, as I mentioned before. The criteria were developed by the Dutch consultancy firm Aidenvironment. They were an important hub in the web of information. Aidenvironment collected information in Indonesia and wrote reports to Friends of the Earth. Friends of the Earth influenced the opinion in Europe about palm oil, and they viewed this as a threat against the rainforests. The funding to Friends of the Earth came from the taxpayers in the Netherlands. So, now we come to Germany. Because we have one part of it. We saw the Dutch. Germany has another role in this. I can say that together with my home country, Sweden. In June 2004, the German government invited to an international conference on renewable energy. This was a response to the work from the Group of 8 Renewable Energy Task Force, the Millennium Goals, and the United Nations Earth Summit in 2002. The operations for the conference was, however, run by an American think tank called World Watch Institute and the newly founded Renewable Energy Network. So we have two kind of opposing forces in this game. Now we come to Holland again. And this is those transition experiments that Unilever took part of and developed in the Green Resources Group. They came to operation in 2006 when the Kramer Commission was born. It was chaired by Professor Jacqueline Kramer. She was a professor of environmental management and member of a board of Shell Oil. And she later succeeded Peter Winsemius as Minister of Environment. It's a tight group of people. This commission became the operational vehicle for making the plan a reality. And they incorporated the transition governance agenda. Transition to sustainability. This work was done in cooperation with United Kingdom and some other countries. Together with Holland, UK was a part of the opposing force to Germany and Sweden. And they, in this group, they wanted to formulate this testable criteria for sustainably produced biomass and create a broad support base among authorities, market parties, and NGOs. And they did. Some in the same year, some months later, it was a review of a biofuels directive, and some were not really happy with this. One of them was Unilever. They say the usual things they always say. Unilever believes biofuels have a significant role in contributing to the reduction of greenhouse gas, and all the usual stuff. But they have had a major concern and said that the artificial promotion of vegetable oils would create unjustifiable price increases, shortages of supply, and the distortion of the vegetable oil market. Interestingly enough, they also said that this would stimulate consumers to switch consumption to vegetable oils and with this to animal fats, and this would be a major risk factor in heart disease. But they were willing to contribute constructively to the development of a responsible, sustainable, and market-oriented solution. I have read all almost every review that came in, and Unilever was impressive, really impressive. They had all the demands for the criteria there already, 2006. And I can say that Greenpeace didn't say a thing. Greenpeace didn't say a thing about biofuels in 2006 in the consultation. Or not involved. In December 2006, a report that changes things comes out. Because before this, biofuels was viewed in more positive perspective. But now, peatland degradation fuels climate change, as it's stated. This is from Wetlands International, which is a Dutch NGO supported by the Dutch government. And Wetlands framed this as it would be creating climate change. And it's an interesting thing that happens with scientific findings, because this happened to be if one changed it was about land use and wetlands, and what happens if one cuts down the rainforest and releases carbon dioxide. It has nothing to do with biodiesel, but it was framed like that. So it came an attack against biodiesel, and it was claimed that this would result in dramatic changes in the climate. This report helped to change the Dutch legislation. Environmental State Secretary Peter van Giel said that now he knows the tremendous impact of palm oil production on global climate change and reforestation. He regrets supporting this form of energy. The Dutch Parliament yesterday fully supported a policy change. Wetlands, we had been a part of the Kramer Commission, and we were funded by the Dutch government. So one can say that they kind of lobbied themselves for this. And one can say that the connection to biofuels was kind of dishonest, as the damage to the environment was the same with all palm oil, for food as fuel. And the same year, we now talk about this with how to influence the whole game. In 2006, the non-party political organization Globe International started a working group for biofuels and the sustainability criteria. It's a very interesting organization that is kind of unknown for most parts, but have a huge influence in the European Parliament. We also work in a lot of other parliaments over the world. And they started this group to develop sustainable criteria and also rules for the trade. This organization was founded by Al Gore, John Kerry, and Hemmo Monti. Headquarters has since 2004 been located in London. This Hemmo Monti also is the boss, or he founded the Aidenvironment. But take care of this, wrote this report. They wrote the reports for the Kramer Commission. So we have a foundation to continue with. In March 2007, the European Union presented a new renewable energy strategy with 10% in the transport energy mix to 2020. And now, biofuels was a way to solve a lot of problems. Commissioner Dimas said a new car park was needed in Europe in order to fight climate change. But, however, a shift was approaching. The new ambitious goals was soon attacked from a couple of sources. Just some months later, we have European Union International Biofuels Conference. It's held in Brussels. And now biofuels starts getting questioned. The evidence that links biofuels from palm oil to climate change is now being expressed from a lot of participants, like Corrado Clini, now head of a global biofuels partnership. He claims that palm oil from Indonesia can produce more harmful emissions than the fossil fuels they replace. The solution, sustainability criteria for biofuels. So what is it all about? In October 2007, Unilever releases a report called Sustainable Biofuels. And they now say that studies have shown that biodiesel made from palm oil produces 3 to 10 times more CO2 than an equivalent amount of fossil fuel. The situation is even worse for some other biodiesel, also connected to Unilever's business. And this is straight from this report from Wetlands and another report that I've read. The evidence is very weak if you read these reports. So something's happening. It's a transition from the report to what they actually say here. And now, at this time, the opinion starts. We have a science before, and we have a political foundation. And now, the next phase of operation starts. Palm oil kills forest and climate, driving to destruction. And it's centered around two organizations, Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace. Friends of the Earth has, of course, worked earlier with this issue. Greenpeace is new on this. And they actually say now that biofuels will cause a climate time bomb. And Greenpeace talks about something like, this is the worst, most severe environmental catastrophe but will ever happen, and the earth will go under. Very doomy stuff, I can say. And the thing is that when one look at these organizations, Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, they are located in Amsterdam, both of them. Their main offices are in Amsterdam. And I made a study of these organizations' funding. Where did it come from? Interesting thing with Friends of Europe is that they claim that they are a grassroots organization. Friends of Europe International, they state, we are the biggest grassroots organization in the world. But if you look on the funding, governments, you can see Netherlands and Germany, we have there too. The EU Commission, 43%. Foundations, big part as well. Member fees, 12%. So this organization has no real independence at all. This claim, and you can see the foundations and what they are connected to. And why is this? What has happened? Wasn't this supposed to be some, it's the activists, it's the people that demands things, but this has been now become an operation from governments. But this is a foundation, and we go back to the Brundtland report again. The idea of funding for environmental organizations was a part of this report, and also beyond interdependence that Peter Winsemius was involved with. And they wanted to leverage the potential of environmental organizations to implement sustainability goals. And in the Brundtland report, they call for funding from governments and large foundations to do this. And in the European Union, they have it's very specific what this money is supposed to do. It's not just give them money and you can do whatever you like with it. No, it's stated to in order to receive the money from us, you will promote European Union environmental legislation. Acts as a kind of counterweight to industry. Build up public opinion and follow up obedience to directives in member countries, and also reach groups that are not so skeptical through traditional channels. So it's very clever, very clever. And a lot of these organizations that are in the European Union, everyone that is operating in Brussels, they have a group that's called Green 8. Everyone except for Greenpeace, but don't accept funding from governments or corporations. But they, however, take money from foundations. So one can say this is more like a tool for the European Commission, and also this is can be applied as well to the Dutch example. And here's what Björn Stigson, advisor to Unilever and the previous boss for World Business Council on Sustainable Development, says. NGOs must get involved in helping to find the situation at work and cooperate with industry in implementing them. The days when NGOs could remain on the outside looking in, like theater critics on opening night, are gone. Now they must join the cast of a play in helping to put on an award-winning performance. the theater. And this is a quote from this book by Peter Vincemius, Sustainable Strategies to Achieve Competitive Advantage. So this is their view about it. Now we are in 2007, 2008, and we have a kind of a trigger event. And this biofuel brings food prices up, and everyone talks about it. It's like a catastrophe for the whole world. This is supported by reports from the OECD and the World Bank. And they release a couple of reports that connects biofuels investment with food prices. This was highlighted in media, and I suppose all of you remember this. And this is the context at a time when Greenpeace attacks Unilever. And as we've seen, Greenpeace has just recently started to talk about the problem with palm oil. They now formed the Unholy Alliance with government funding, with big corporations, the political network, the environmental organizations, the research institutes, and they worked for this goal, sustainable palm oil, or sustainable biofuels, I should say. Because this is in a context, 2008, something happened. An important thing happened. We saw the European Union Renewables Directive, and it went through the Parliament at that time. And as I mentioned before, this organization, Globe International, but almost nobody has heard of them. But their biofuels working group had worked and finished their report, and they said they released a little paper that they talked about their achievements, and they said that they developed the European Parliament's thinking on sustainable criteria. These were included in the Renewable Energy System Directive adopted in December 2008. Unilever was one of the funders for this group. And I was, as mentioned before, the responsible person for the sustainable criteria to implement it was Anders Wijkman, the president, now the president of Club of Rome. He wasn't that happy, but I found this information, and I wanted to stop my work. And this is a kind of a clever way of governing, I would say, but a bit dishonest, or very dishonest. In 2012, biofuels was kind of revalued. Commissioner Connie Hedegaard proclaimed that only truly sustainable biofuels could be promoted, not those that competed with food and raised greenhouse emissions. Unilever had thus won this round, because it's an never-ending story, I can say. They used this, and they learned from it, and the story continues. And I will end with, to conclude this. But we say this represents a very clever way of governing. It's like a theater or a trick of an illusionist. This agenda has been worked out long before the political process has started. In this case by working groups with big food and governments in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. They have based this on management strategies with strategic planning. It's almost cybernetic in character. The main goals for these actors in the background are to gain competitive advantage, and also for Unilever to control their resources they're using. And it's, well, it's natural, of course, for them. Unilever wanted global sustainable standards that would be beneficial for them, and they didn't want competition but the producers wanted to start projects for biodiesel, and they didn't like it. In this way, with these standards, they can control small business and the competing interests. Environmental concerns are used to raise alarm for the issue, because they couldn't do that themselves. They couldn't. It would be suspicious if the food industry said this. So they had the environmental movement do it for them. And it's very clever, it's very smart, because they are seen as the good guys, always. And we can see that the proof that they have that was in these scientific reports was very weak and more of a speculative character. It wasn't a big import of biodiesel or biofuels at that time, almost none. So this was more a thing in the media, a media spectacle. And I can say, I was fooled. I was very fooled by this. And we can see that the environmental organizations have got money from government and foundations. They can't act on their own, really. They have a mandate, and they are supposed to follow the script in this. Their purpose is to influence opinion and act against non-compliance from the policy when it has been implemented. It looks like they are influencing the policy and the commanders in the top, but they have little own power. They are more an extension of the governments and the European Union. And we have non-party political networks that are used to implement legislation. Global International has become an important, but not widely known tool for this. And then everybody in this game, they win on it. That's why it works. But however, I would say that this is a kind of a grand illusion and a matrix of propaganda.